Hi, and I'm William Steele with All in VR. I'm all in VR, are you? So today we're going to talk about the Oculus Quest Pro. And I've had the opportunity to use this for about somewhere between 18 and 24 hours now. And I've definitely got some insights into using the Quest, whether it's worth it, some of the things that are drawbacks at the moment, and we're going to go over a lot of that. So what do I think about it? Is it worth the $1,500 investment for somebody? Well, I think there are some things that make it very, very unique, and let's start out with the facial interface. So I actually really love the open facial interface by default. I wish more headsets came like this. Even something as simple as working out in Supernatural, which I do regularly. With a fully enclosed interface, I can't see anything around me. I don't know where things are around me. Sometimes I'm actually doing my workouts in a bit of a closed area and I don't have a lot of space. So I don't want to end up hitting the walls and things, especially on the boat that I live on. I sometimes want to work out there and I really cramp for space. I can do it, but I have to be very careful where I move and try to somehow be somewhat aware of my surroundings. With this, I can actually, without any blockers on, I can actually see my surroundings pretty well. I put these side blinders on at first when using Supernatural, and I actually had to take them off. I didn't have to take them off, but I wanted to take them off because of it just didn't, I felt still a little bit like kind of too closed off from the world around me while I was working in Supernatural, and I have to say I loved that. Now, one of the other things is battery life, which is clearly a concern for some people. And one thing I was able to do is put a battery pack on the top of this. So here we go. So pretty simple. I'm using this small kind of, it's actually very compact, very lightweight. It's 15,000 milliamp hours, and it actually has always worked really well. I've been using it actually for the past 24 hours, not always with the Quest on, but sometimes if it does charge the Quest up while you're using it. And right now it's still halfway charged, and I probably use this, I don't know, maybe a couple hours at least with the headset on. And so what I usually do is I'll attach it on the back, and you can just quickly zip tie this thing up. So I just feed the zip ties first through the headset, and you can then just zip tie this guy right to there, which is pretty easy to do. So you want to put this port on the side, the USB-C port on the side that's going to go into the USB-C port in the headset, and just pull it tight on one side. And actually this kind of fits here better than on the Quest. The only thing that it does that I'm not, of course now I'm trying to show how to do it, it's suddenly becoming a little more difficult than usual. So I just put that on, and I imagine somebody will eventually come up with an accessory that does something similar to this for this specific headset. There we go, you get one on. It's easy to get the second on when you get the first on. And we're just gonna go down here, and bingo, there we go. And it actually fits on there, it's pretty snug, it's not going anywhere. And you can still access the adjustment wheel, which is nice too. So I can still adjust it for my head. And then all you're gonna do is just plug it in. So we're gonna put in our plug here and our plug here. And you're gonna see it, you can hear it go on, it's charging now. So now it's charging. And then if I wanna put it onto here, what I can do is I can just place it on here. And if I don't wanna be draining the battery while I'm doing it, just take, oops, see, is this on here? Okay, I think so. Then just unplug it. And then you'll start charging from here. What would be cool if when it's charging here, if somehow the port would know to charge whatever battery's connected here, but it doesn't, it's gonna start charging from the USB port instead of the base station. But that would be a cool feature if somebody just made it like that. Now, what I did notice is it definitely makes it considerably back heavy. You can see that if I, where it would normally bounce, it adds weight. And for things like, Supernatural or fast moving games, I probably want to take it off because it kind of might give you a little bit of whiplash because it's got that extra momentum on the back. So what you can do is just, you just take it off when you're not using it. Now, if somebody made an attachment, what I would suggest is if somebody designed something that attached to the sides here, mounted on the sides, and kept the battery on the top of your head, that way it's kind of staying in one spot. So you're not going to have that unbalanced effect right here. So what else can I say? So, all right, Blinders, I like them in some situations when I want to feel fully immersed, but things that are moving really fast, like an exercise game, I really like not being entirely immersed. And so far, right, we're doing like office work in various productivity apps like Horizon Workrooms. That's another thing that we should talk about is Horizon Workrooms. It's really got a long way to go. I mean, I know we have various productivity applications that have been around for longer that have a lot more features. One which I will not name, but everybody knows. And I'm wondering why Horizon Workrooms is so unpolished. Yes, like it will connect to any, as I have 3 displays on here and all 3 displays go into VR, but those displays unfortunately do not, well, all those displays go into VR, they are considerably downscaled and you cannot override the downscaling, which to me is a bit problematic. Well, now we're here on my boat. I couldn't finish the review in my office, so this is also a nice place to do a review. It's a little quieter than where it was going to be at my office. So let's continue. So one thing that I forgot to mention is I didn't see or even realize that there were these nubs that go on the controllers, and I don't have them with me, so they're, hopefully I didn't throw them out. I think I kept most of the packaging, so they should be in my box somewhere, but I don't have the stylus nubs for, you know, writing in the Quest. Now, one of the things I'm curious about too is I had this fully charged last night when I left my office, and right now it should, let's see how much charge I actually have on it. If I put it on, I really have no idea. But I just did a standby off. I didn't really turn it off. Okay, let's see what's happening here. All right, see how much power we have left in this headset. All right, for some, oh, I got to create a new Guardian too because now I'm in a new space. So let's create a new Guardian really quick. The floor. I'll use the controller for this. All right, and we'll confirm. Okay, I'm gonna just do a really quick boundary. No big deal. All right, there we go. And boundary created. Okay, so for battery life, all right, so I went down to 92%, so I'm assuming I was probably somewhere around 100%, and now I'm at 92. So in about 12 hours or so, it has used, actually more than that, probably like 16 hours, it's used 8%. So going into standby and not completely turning it off definitely does consume some battery life. So anyway, let's go back to the rest of the review now that I know that. All right, so one thing I mentioned is that the controllers were an issue right out of the box, but it wasn't so much the controllers, it required a software update in order to fix the controllers. And so my right controller only had 3 dimensions of 3 degrees of freedom, and it wouldn't move around, but once I did a software update, which took a while, it did fix that issue, and luckily I didn't need to connect it to or pair it to the Meta Quest app on my phone before it did the update. But that is one of my gripes about it, is I did have to install the Meta Quest app in order to use it. It would have been nice to be able to have some way to use this out of the box without having to require a phone app to be able to use it. And there's lots of people that might want to use this in a business environment that don't have a business phone, and they shouldn't have to put a Meta Quest app on the phone or even have a phone to do it. So Meta, this shouldn't require a phone, especially a professional device. It should be essentially self-contained completely by itself without needing another personal device to be able to activate it. So that needs to be fixed in my personal opinion. Face tracking in the headset is very accurate and neat when you're looking at it actually in the Oculus Home area, or the Meta Home, whatever we're going to call it now. But when I went into Meta Horizons and went there and I asked people how my facial expressions and how my speech looks when I'm talking to them, their response was it looks very weird. So I couldn't see that. So unless I get to maybe communicate in Horizons with somebody else that has a Quest Pro, so I can judge how accurate their voice is in sync with their mouth movements and such, and how everything looks, I won't really know. But my guess is, since it works locally just within the Meta Home area, when you're just kind of looking at yourself, that it must be something related to Horizons. So there's probably some software bugs that need to be worked out, or it's maybe not processing the data quite so well at this point. So that's something that needs to be fixed. Not the end of the world, but also I did notice there weren't that many people in Horizons. And again, that's not an Oculus Quest problem. That's more of a, MetaQuest problem, MetaQuest Pro problem. It's more of a general issue with Horizons. I guess it's just not catching on. There were some neat things in there, but it doesn't seem to be nearly up to the scale and mass adoption of something like VR chat. So let's move on. Let's talk about something that I waited for a very long time for a while back, Infinite Office. And I specifically got my Logitech K830, or K830 I think? Yes, K830, so I could use it in Infinite Office and I could use it on the Quest originally, and it does work. It tracks a little bit wonky, but it's better than not having a keyboard that's tracked. And as we learned in a previous video, that this keyboard, the way it tracks is just with image tracking, nothing else. There's no other special hardware in it, so in theory, the Oculus Quest can track any keyboard. So when they add new keyboards, they're just updating the image data for the keyboard so it can be tracked. That's about it. So, and it's still a little bit wonky being tracked. You can see how as I try to move it, sometimes it lose it, especially if it's up and I'm moving it around. But once it's stationary, it tends to stay, but sometimes your hands kind of occlude it too much. Occlude it a little bit too much, and then you end up having an issue where it might disappear, so then you got to take your hands away or move it around a little bit till it tracks again. That could be a little bit annoying and something that I think they need to work on, that hopefully they should be able to perfect a little bit. Especially if it's clear that it's stationary, that it shouldn't be moving. It should be able to just know that it's not moving. Even if my hands occlude it completely, it should still be smart enough to know that it's still there because it hasn't seen it move positions. So I think that could be fairly easy to fix if Meta wanted. And that brings me to Infinite Office. Well, Infinite Office doesn't feel very infinite if you ask me. Now, I'm not just trying to poo-poo on Meta, but they took a year to release Infinite Office. A year. And we waited for it. And then finally they released Infinite Office. Maybe even 2 years later. I don't know, it took forever. And when they finally release it, all it has is scaled down screens. So your screens, you can mirror up to, well, at least I tried up to 3 screens today because I had 3 physical screens. I was able to mirror those in Infinite Office. And what else? I was able to, I don't think there was much of it. My keyboard worked to track it, but it scaled down my 3 screens. That's the annoying thing. If I try to go and I change the resolution, it won't, it basically reverts back. It won't let me scale up the resolution. So I was way down below even 1080p. So you can't even get 1080p out of each screen, which I guess is okay, but considering you have other things out there, one company who I shall not name for reasons I don't want to get into, and I can get into, and I could, but I prefer it not to because it could just create headaches and legal problems. So there's one other company out there that that does this kind of remote work where you can use your computer in VR, and to be fair, they so far are doing a much better job. Now, why would Facebook, after releasing a pro device, not put that much effort into Infinite Office? That left me scratching my head, and I started to think a little bit more. Well, you have one company out there who's really kind of killing it in that aspect of it. They're doing it much better than others. There's problems. Obviously, nothing's gonna be perfect. But despite those problems, it's far more useful and usable than something like Infinite Office. And the only thing I can think of is maybe they have their sights set on acquiring that company. That would make some sense, because if you're going to put that little effort into an office suite type of product like Meta is, like after all this time, the only thing that makes any sense is they're planning on acquiring somebody to essentially replace that functionality. So why build more functionality if you're in the works, or that you're just going to end up acquiring somebody that's going to do that for you? You can just add it into your suite of tools or utilities of applications or whatever. So they might not have a motivation if they're planning on purchasing somebody. And again, I'm not going to say the company name, but I think we all know who that might be. So don't be surprised if that other remote office company ends up getting acquired by Meta. And again, I have not said the name, so I'll leave that up to your imagination. So I already mentioned the keyboard tracking is just far from perfect, but I still am glad I have a trackable keyboard. I'm still very much happy with that. And one of the other things that wasn't intuitive was resizing the screen when you're using the browser, resizing each window. You can have multiple tabs open now and you can resize them, but it's not intuitive when there's a little tiny white bar at the bottom you got to grab to undock it from the home menu before you can start resizing it. It's just put a button there. I mean, come on, like, that's just, who in the world ever thought of that? That is like the worst user experience. Just nobody would figure that out. I consider myself a smart person. I'm in tech, I'm a software engineer. That's just, and I don't even, not a person who builds really good GUIs in my opinion, but that's just a horrible design choice, Meta. I mean, come on. I get you're doing some cool things, but there's certain little things that really can make a big difference. And that's one of the problems when you're a big company like Meta, is a lot of things slip through the cracks. You know, even Google, it always boggles my mind how a company worth billions and billions and billions of dollars can't fix simple issues in Gmail that have existed for literally years that they just don't fix. So let's get to some other interesting things I found. And I'm not sure if Quest 2 has this or not, but there were multiple Guardian zones, and this was really cool. So I could walk from one Guardian zone to another. So I would leave it would tell me I'm leaving it, it would go into pass-through mode, and I could see the second Guardian that I had set up, and I could walk over to that Guardian, and then it would ask me if I want to resume, and then I resume in that new area, and I'm recentered. And that was very interesting. And you can wait, if you want to get to the center of the area and then let it recenter you, wait to say continue or yes to switch to the new room scale Guardian until you get to the point that you're going to, and then it'll reset for you. So I thought that was interesting. I don't remember that with the Quest 2. Maybe that's available in the Quest 2. I don't know. I'm not sure. So that was interesting, and I did like that. However, I would have liked the ability to, when I had my desk mode set up, to not have to transition between desk mode and to room scale mode. I'd like to be able to have my desk in my room scale mode, and maybe I can do that. I haven't really played around with that as much. Maybe I can just set that up in my regular environment. But the desk mode is okay, but it just, I don't know, there's something about it. Like if I back away too far from my desk, because sometimes I want to lean back in my chair and feel comfy, then I start seeing pass through instead of the, you know, what's in front of me, and that's like kind of a little bit annoying too. So there's some things, again, still kind of wonky, things that can be improved upon. And that, again, that's software that has nothing to do with the Quest Pro itself. I did like, in regards to keyboard tracking, one of the things that was nice is seeing your hands, you know, seeing your hands like in full color versus black and white just looks and feels so more natural when you're typing. I really, really do like that it kind of gives you, that you see your hands physically over the keyboard. That actually makes it a lot nicer, honestly. And in theory, that makes me think Meta could really, instead of actually having to track a virtual keyboard that moves around, if they were able to just track any keyboard, like, you know, it's a keyboard, you know, just basically open up any keyboard and get an area around it, around the keys that's large enough, and then anytime you go into that view, it would just, it could just always show pass-through of that. It doesn't need to necessarily know where each key is. It doesn't need to be perfectly mapped. It just needs to be able to capture the entirety of the keyboard and pass through. And I think that would be fine. And you could theoretically then, like, kind of in a not so accurate, not the same way, but in an acceptable way, track any keyboard. Again, something they could do that wouldn't take too much effort, I don't think. But I guess that's all relative in terms of what is too much effort, especially in big company. There's so much, what do you call it? Just so much bureaucracy trying to get anything done in large corporations like Meta. So that's why I usually like working for smaller companies where you can actually get stuff done, which is unfortunate because that means you do more work. Let's talk about the manual diopter or IPD adjustment. So as you remember, you can just move this in and out. And I do like being able to do it manually. So I was thinking about this. Would I like it manual or would I like it automatic? What I like about it is there's different things that I might want different IPD settings for. So if I'm working on my computer, I might set my IPD wider for a wider field of view, just feel more natural. If I'm doing other things, I might want an narrower IPD. But as you adjust the IPD, it doesn't change really the optics that much. So there's a little bit of blur out at the edges, but not nearly as much as the Quest 2. There's like no screen door or God rays, which is great. It's nice to not have that screen door effect or the God rays. But what you do get is without the blinders, you'll get a little bit of light bleed around the sides, which is acceptable. And depending on what you're doing, I may or may not want that. For the most part, I really liked this open style. I like my eyes close to these lenses. So I tend to put this adjustments so you can move it closer to your face or further away. I like to actually have the lenses very close, almost where I open my eyelashes and I can feel my eyelashes hit the screen, like just a little bit past that. Works great because I can then, I feel like I get a wider field of view. I don't know, something about it just really feels very natural having it very close to my eyes. And obviously you can't do that if you have glasses, but for me, that works really, really well. Now, one of the other things that I forgot to mention about this open interface, when you're doing things that are very, very fast, like Rec Room, or what else, or Supernatural or Beat Saber, when you're working with those, when you're playing in those interactive games or whatever you want to call them, having the open interface keeps me anyway from getting nauseous. So usually after about 10 minutes, in something like Rec Room especially, that was the worst. In Rec Room, I get nauseous after about sometimes 10 minutes of play, and I would actually get very, very nauseous. With this, with the open interface, I think because you can still sense your surroundings and you're still sensing some like normal refresh rate, the natural light and natural imagery coming from around you, for whatever reason, I don't get that same nausea. So that also is really, really cool. Something I didn't expect at all, and I haven't really heard anybody else mention. So if you get a chance, let me know. Does this open interface in things like Rec Room and Supernatural, does that make you not get so nauseous? I guess I never got nauseous in Supernatural, but definitely in Rec Room, for whatever reason, would definitely get me nauseous. Maybe they fixed that before this came out. I don't know. I was curious if this could charge this cable line. We know it charges the controllers, and you can charge one at a time. I'm not really sure exactly why they give this to you. Like, what's the overall purpose of having this cable? Like, I get it so you can charge the controllers, but I mean, if you're going to have the controllers and the headset with you, why wouldn't you just take this whole thing? The only way that this would make sense to me would be if this could somehow also charge the Quest, but I don't think so, because this is not magnetic. So this is definitely not for charging the Quests. See, that would have made sense if there was some way to charge this guy. But I guess that doesn't matter. I mean, what's the point of this? Because all you need is a USB-C cable on the Quest itself to charge it without this. So I guess that makes sense. So if you just have the USB-C, you could leave this docking station, the space station, plug in your Quests, let it charge that way, and then you can plug in one controller at a time and charge it that way. So you don't have to drag everything with you. And I guess if you really want, you could just get another one of these cables. Somebody mentioned it's kind of weird they don't give you two. And I mean, I guess like I kind of get it, but at the same time, is it that much more effort to just carry this around? Like, you're probably going to do that. So if you're really trying to just shed some weight, just having one cable, not a big deal. I'm sure you can, I imagine you could order another one online. So I'm not too concerned about that at all. So another thing that made me curious, there's two headphone jacks on here. So that makes me wonder, can I use both headphones at the same time? So I've got one of these guys. I need two of these. So let me find my other. I think I have one right here. Oh yeah, so we have two sets of headphones. Let's plug them into both jacks just for, you know, shiznits and giggles. Try not to swear on this channel. I don't know if there's any policy against it, but, and these aren't made for kids necessarily, but I'm sure kids watch this stuff, so I don't think swearing is that big of a deal, but some people do. So I'll try to remain nice as I and civil. There we go. And couth as I unravel these headsets. So there's one. Okay. And there is two. So that is something I was definitely curious about. And here we go. All right, let's put this headset on. I know I've got two of these, so I guess I can just plug them in now before I start. That'll probably be easier. I'll plug one into the right, one into the left. So one right here. So one will go on the right, one will go on the left. All right, there's one. And two. Let's connect you. Okay. Put you back on the base station. Okay. And let's see if we get audio out of both of these. So I'll put this back here. Okay, doing lots of different adjustments to this headset. All right. What's that? Is that a light bleed? Oh, there's light bleed. Okay, I was worried a little bit. But yeah, sometimes you get, especially when there's like light directly behind you, you definitely get some light bleed. So I was worried just for a second that maybe my headset was having issues, but it's just, yep, just light bleed. Okay. Okay, so let's see if I can get audio here. Let's play something with some video. Okay, it's not tracking my hands. Come on. Come on, Papa. There we go. All right, so let's go to some YouTube something, right? Do I have any videos? Let's go to YouTube here. Oh, right. We'll go here. Okay, you. Nope. I guess I could use my keyboard. Actually, let me, while I'm doing this, I can, oh yeah, let me, you know what, I'm gonna use the remote here. Okay, go here, and we'll do a little recording. Recording? Oh. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's watch some YouTube here, and let's go back to my YouTube. There we go. Let's just watch anything. And it can't be reached. Oh, I'm not on the Wi-Fi here. That's going to be a problem. I got to connect to my Wi-Fi. All right. Oh, no, I don't want to add a network. I just want to scan. I want to find mine. There we go. Oh boy. Maybe I do want to use my keyboard then for this. That's going to be a bit of a pain. Okay. On. Turn you on. Oops, caps lock. Okay. Oh yeah, I don't want to. No, okay, I'll have to lower that out. All right. Okay. Oh, can't display my keyboard. Yeah, interesting. It was working, but I can't track it. I think it's because the ambient light from outside, maybe? That's my guess. All right, so now I'm connected to my network. Now I should be able to get to YouTube. Okay, let's see what we got here. So did these both work, or does just one work? And if they both work, what is the use case for that? That's the question, right? Okay. So both of those are working. On both ears, okay. Let's try the next one. And, oh yeah, it was working too. Now question, quite curious, I unplug one of these. It sounds exactly the same level. Interesting. Okay, so they both do definitely work. Pause that now, pause. Okay, so you can use two at the same time. Now I wonder what that's about. I mean, I guess you could be using headphones and streaming audio from your headset at the same time. Yeah, I don't really know what the use case of having two sets of plugs that work at the same time. That's definitely interesting, and I don't know. I have no idea what that's about. If somebody has an idea what that might be about, please let me know. I'm definitely curious to know why that would be a thing here. Let's talk about pass-through. Pass-through. So the pass-through in here is very grainy if you haven't noticed. It's definitely leaves a little bit to be desired, but what I will give it is it's making a perfect 3D effect. So the 3D effect of this headset is just fantastic. I don't know, I do know how they're doing it. At least my understanding is they're using the tracking cameras to get the stereoscopic, probably a depth map, and then I think they're mixing the depth map and overlapping or overlaying the color pass-through over it. Now the depth map, my guess, is going to be lower resolution than the pass-through camera. So it might be that in terms of just being expedience, they went for better 3D effects and 3D feel, which will work better for augmented reality type of applications on the headset and for showcasing that, than going for the visual quality, where I think Pico 4 probably went the other route. It looks relatively flat, so they probably focused on visual clarity over 3D effects. So I don't know where they intend to go with this. In theory, even with a lower resolution depth map, they should be able to use a higher resolution video or image feed and still get a pretty good quality 3D effects with higher quality video, but maybe they're having some kind of issues and they wanted to keep that out, because a lot of people have been saying that the camera should produce higher image clarity than we're seeing right now, and that a future update might fix that. And I could certainly see that, so I'm very excited, but I don't know, I can't compare it to the Pico 4, because the Pico 4 1, well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard people say the visual clarity is much better on the Pico 4. But what I also think is maybe they have similar resolutions in their pass-through cameras, because the pass-through cameras are just, in my understanding, is the middle camera in the center right here. That's the pass-through camera. That's not stereoscopic. So what you're seeing is right from that, and it's being mixed with a stereo view, which is for tracking, which are not colored. Those are still going to be black and white or infrared or whatever. They're using, I guess, infrared cameras. I think they're actually black and white that support infrared. It's a whole nother debate to get into. But if I'm waiting for somebody to do a teardown, because then we'll hopefully get to find out what is the resolution of that camera on the Quest. And then by comparing that, if it's similarly 16 megapixels or more, then we'd be able to say, okay, it eventually should be able to match the visual clarity of the Pico 4. But again, I have not tested it, so I can't confirm it, but that's what others have said. And I just, come on, Meta, tell us the resolution of the camera. Like, you hide so many ridiculous things. Just tell us the full specs of the cameras. You don't have to hide that. Tell us, let us know. Unless there's a reason you're not telling us, but I would like to know. So another thing is this protective cover, which is great. I like having it. And obviously the front does smudge pretty easily, so you probably want to have one of these lens cleaners, which they give you one with the Quest, and clean this off, because I imagine that also might help with things like tracking. If it gets smudgy, you might have some trouble with some things. And I find my hands are always on the bottom here a lot, and I guess there's some kind of sensors down here, right? So you probably want to clean that periodically as well. And of course the lenses and all that fun stuff. But for now, one thing that I wanted to talk about is when you put this protective cover on, it's very easy to put on, but it blocks the onboard charging. Now you can kind of just open the bottom a little bit and set it down and just kind of leave it like sitting right here. But what I don't understand is why, I mean, I get you have this protective cover and it's got to cover everything. I don't know, it just, I guess it's going to protect everything, because when you got it on here, they probably assume, I think this is more, not so much about keeping the sunlight out of it, which it does obviously help with that. I think this is more about not protecting it from the sun as it is about keeping it safe if you drop it, or keep it from scratching. Like, let's say I put this in a bag and it's rubbing against like some keys or something in your bag or whatever else, something sharp. This will protect the lenses and things. That's my guess. This is more about that. And if you put it on your docking station, you're probably not that concerned with it. But I'm sure somebody will probably make a cover that with the bottom cut out at some point. But you can also just do that. Just kind of lay it on there a little bit. And it doesn't stay perfectly, but if you're not moving around a lot, it'll stay there. So that's not a big deal. But yeah, so overall impressions, what is the conclusion? Is there any conclusion of this? Well, the only real direct comparison I can give you is from the Quest 2. And this is clearly an upgrade from the Quest 2 in many ways. But so is the Pico 4, for instance. But the Pico 4 is not going to have all your games from the Quest 2. Some it might if they have some kind of crossplay, but for the most part, it's not going to have the same large library. There are things I like about what the Pico 4 is doing, especially the enterprise version that they're coming out with. It's supposed to be very open, supposed to access the hardware level, it's supposed to have a lot more control over it, which obviously Meta does not do. So that's kind of cool. But they're only going to start releasing the enterprise version. While it is $600 cheaper, it's not going to release until November, which isn't that far away. But then I got to figure out a way to order it and get it sent here. Who knows if that's going to sell out as well. So Facebook does have a run for their money, especially if Pico 4 ends up gaining market share, a larger app library, and if they come directly to the US. They definitely will have a run for their money. For me, being a software developer and engineer, I can see this being something if you want to get on board with the latest of what's going on in VR and AR, and it gives you actually a good platform for testing AR capabilities, because obviously I'm sure Meta is going there more in the future. More companies are going to be building AR applications. If you're building these things in Unity, they're far from impossible or even horrendously difficult to port. And if you use things like OpenXR, they're probably a lot easier to port between platforms. So I think you have a lot of value from a professional and development standpoint in this. You know, you're not paying double the price for the Vario, or maybe even more than that. I forget how much that is, but it's really expensive, plus a subscription. So that's good. What they don't offer, though, from what I understand, at least not yet, is like management utilities and capabilities. And again, I shouldn't have to use a phone to activate the device. I should be able to just either use it out of the box or be able to do something other than using a phone to activate it, or activate it on a computer or online or something. There should definitely be another activation mechanism other than using a phone. But visual clarity, great. I really do like the controllers a lot, actually. I can see a lot of people that want a nice little upgrading to these bad boys. They're just, the way they just feel really good. And I'm curious to try out the stylus aspect of it. I didn't see anything to try that out with yet, but I need to do a little more research to see what applications are supporting some of the new features of this headset. The sound out of the box without headphones is perfectly fine. And likewise, I still like to sometimes use a set of headphones, and I'll probably always do that. But sometimes I'm lazy, I don't want to throw in headphones. The sound in here is perfectly fine for just everyday things, but it does carry quite a bit. So while the advantage of it sounding better with the open ear interface on here than previous versions, it's also louder and other people will hear it more too. So you have a little less privacy if you're not using headphones. But I take the better sound quality over privacy because I'm usually not that concerned with what people are going to hear in my headset most of the time. What else? I'm really curious to see how people start pushing the boundaries with the XR2 Plus. You know, this kind of overclocked XR2 chip that's in here. I think that will probably take a while before we really get to see what it can do. I've got a few things that I'm working on that should push that to the limits a little more. So that will be really interesting. I'm very excited. There's a bunch of things I'm excited about. And I think if you're, you know, if you're a gamer and you just really like gaming, I don't think, unless you're really into augmented reality, and even then, if you're already using another augmented reality product, like I also use the Nreal Lite. So the Nreal Lite is also a nice headset, and granted, it doesn't have the big field of view, but it's got its own advantages. Like just for really experimenting with AR, it's great, but their SDK is a little bit lacking. But that's a heck of a lot cheaper than this. So I mean, you really have to weigh your drawbacks and benefits. Again, for businesses, $1,500 for a device is not horrible. I mean, you can easily spend a lot more on a laptop, but it really depends on if you need the technology now. If you don't, if you're a business, you might not see yourself doing much with this stuff for another year or two. You know, I don't know. It's a bit pricey for what it is, but it's really cool. I don't think $1,500 is ridiculous. But when you got something like Pico 4 Enterprise, something like Pico 4 Enterprise coming out, you know, it's a harder sell right now for Meta to be selling it for $1,500. If Pico was in the market here, they'd be definitely having a harder time. However, you know, it's what it is. When things come out, you know, it's what people will pay for it. So this did sell out at the Best Buy store, at a few Best Buy stores that I've heard of. So yeah, it's a cool headset. There's still so much more I need to experiment with. I'm far from done experimenting. I've got some of my own software to build for this. I work more on productivity applications. I don't really build games. I'm not really a gamer. While I've worked on games for some companies, I really prefer the productivity side of it. So when I get that going, you'll see what comes out. And I think one of the next things I'll have to do is do a video on how this works with the Quest Link, right? We want to know how this works with AirLink. We want to know how this works with Virtual Desktop. And I haven't tried either of those things yet. I do have Virtual Desktop. I just haven't installed it on here and tried that out yet. So that will be interesting. And I can't wait to actually get into a flight simulator with this headset and see how that looks. That would be really cool. I love Microsoft Flight Simulator. Using a headset like this will be really cool. I might be limited by my GPU since I only have a 3070 Ti. So we'll see how that goes. But I can definitely see how this could be useful. I also want to do a video on how this will feel to do all day. So what is it like to be in this kind of headset for an entire day working? And we'll see how that goes. So I've got some more videos I can do, and as I get more information, as I figure more things out, as I try a few more hacky kind of things with this, I'll let you know. And yeah, is it worth it? To some, I think, and to some, maybe not. It's not a definite answer. There just isn't a right answer if this is worth it for everybody. It's certainly not worth it for everybody, but for some people, it is. So, this is Will Steele, and this is All in VR. I'm all in VR. Are you?